Good morning. Welcome to the third annual celebration of Valor Luncheon benefiting the Charles H. Coolidge National Medal of Honor Heritage Center. My name is Josh Rowe. I'm with News Channel 9. I am honored to serve as your MC today. Honored, it honestly doesn't even begin to describe how I feel about being here today. Definitely honored, but just grateful, right? I've been doing this, this is my third year to do this, and this is a day I look forward to all year long. This day is awesome. You guys are awesome for being here today. Honoring our veterans at Channel 9, something that we're very passionate about, something that is very important to us at Channel 9. This year marks 6 years of our Price of Freedom series, and I want to thank, where are my Channel 9 folks? Channel 9 tables over there, GM Todd Rickey, Tom Henderson, all those folks. Those guys are the people that make that happen, and we are all, from that building here, just honored and grateful that we have an opportunity just to be a part of this. Look around this room. This place, been doing this 3 years, and it has grown and grown and grown, and it is amazing just to be here today. Now, speaking of honored to have, you've chosen to spend part of your day here with us. As our event invitation promised, today's main course is inspiration, and we have so much of that for you over the next 90 minutes or so. The Medal of Honor is our nation's highest and most prestigious military award given to U.S. military service members who have distinguished themselves by acts of valor that are above and beyond the call of duty. To date, there have been 3,524 medals bestowed upon members of our military. I now ask you to please stand. We've got a lot to get to today. We want to get right to it. We're going to start with the invocation delivered by Dr. Bernie Miller. After that, remain standing for the presentation of colors by the Sadi Daisy JROTC. That'll be followed by the national anthem by Mrs. Stephanie Beavers, and then the Pledge of Allegiance by her husband, Major Kevin Beavers. Let's start with Dr. Bernie Miller.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I come boldly in the name of Jesus to the throne of grace to thank you for your grace and mercy that's always there to help us in our time of need. I thank you for the Charles H. Coolidge National Medal of Honor Heritage Center, a place that honors our brave men and women who have served our country. We thank you for them because they provide so much to our country, to our city, and we also thank you for the brave men and women who have served our country with honor and valor and provides character development program in our local schools and Chattanooga's youth and family development centers. Thanks also to our speaker, Medal of Honor recipient, and award-winning author. Thanks, Clint, for your patriotism, courage, integrity, sacrifice, and commitment. And thanks to Major General Bill Raines, Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Heritage Center, for being an extraordinarily bold visionary. Finally, thanks to all sponsors and those who have contributed to our celebration of Valor Luncheon, and I pray for God's blessings for all of us and also for our meal, speakers, servers, and thank you in advance. Amen.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare of arms bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would, please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms. Colors reversed. March. Forward. March.
I want to thank the Saudi Daisy Junior ROTC, Mrs. Stephanie Beavers, Major Kevin Beavers, and Dr. Bernie Miller for all of that. We have a lot, be seated please. We have a lot of attendees, dignitaries, special guests we want to recognize. And so when I call your name, if you could stand, if you could, just to, so we can recognize you. I know that some of these folks that I call your name, they may not be here, but I have not had a chance to put eyes on everyone. So we'll just read the list. Let's start with this. Chattanooga's very own Medal of Honor recipient, Technical Sergeant Charles H. Coolidge. Is Mr. Coolidge or his family here today? I'm not certain. Absolutely. Our guest speaker, Medal of Honor recipient Clint Romachet. Two recipients of the Congressional Medal of Honor Society Citizen Honors Award, Molly Hudgens and Travis Ellis. I know I saw Molly earlier. Okay. Members of our federal delegation, I think I saw Congressman Chuck Fleischman here earlier. Congressman Fleischman back there. Members of the Tennessee General Assembly. I know I saw Robin Smith earlier as well. If there are others and I've missed you, I apologize. Hamilton County Mayor Jim Coppinger and the Hamilton County Commission. Mayor Coppinger. Chattanooga Mayor Andy Burke and members of the City Council. Any other elected officials, appointed officials, anything like that, please stand. I want to recognize you as well. Okay. All right. Let's welcome all trustees and board members for the Heritage Center. And I want to, right now, any military veterans that we have in the house today, please stand and be recognized. Thank you all for your service. Now I want to welcome the 2019 Celebration of Valor Luncheon Chair, Dr. Robert Dooley.
So thank you, Josh. I am delighted to see such a large crowd of individuals here today for the Valor Luncheon. I think we've set a new record this year. Last year, I believe we had about 560 attendees, and this year we have over 800. At this time, I would like to recognize our sponsors. First Tennessee Bank is our presenting sponsor, and I would like to invite its market president, Jay Dale, to the stage for a few remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Dooley. At First Tennessee, we appreciate the sacrifices made by our military and their families, as well as those made over the years by our veterans. Today, we are honored to be a part of the celebration of valor as we shine a spotlight on a real American hero, Clint Romeshay, someone who truly represents the best traits of all who have served and sacrificed in defense of our country. When we all walk out of this room today, I hope you'll leave with a new outlook and appreciation of our active duty soldiers and veterans, but more importantly, I hope you will look for ways you can emulate the 6 character traits that embody the Medal of Honor in all that you do, whether you're in the boardroom, schoolyard, or everyday life. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. And now I'd like to recognize our other key sponsors: Textile Rubber and Chemical Company, EMJ Corporation, the DeCosmo family, UTC's Probasco Distinguished Chair of Free Enterprise, the Patriot Foundation Trust, Merrill Lynch, Graincraft, U.S. Express, Food City, Southeast Bank, Warner Museums, the Double Cola Company, Sinclair Broadcasting, Sunny 92.3 and Classic Country 97.3, the Chattanooga Times Free Press, and EPB. In the absence of the generous support from these sponsors, as well as our company and platoon sponsors that are listed in your program, we could not have had this event and made it the success it is. So let's give all of the sponsors a round of applause. And finally, I want to recognize members of the Celebration of Valor Luncheon Committee for their dedicated efforts and commitment. This committee has worked tirelessly for almost a year planning and preparing this program and this event. So will members of the committee please stand? It's been a true honor to work with you over the past several months. So please enjoy your lunch, and we will continue the program shortly.
Please continue to enjoy your lunch as they bring the lunch around. But we're going to continue with our program. There's plenty to get to today. We want to now introduce Major General Bill Raines, Board Chairman, the National Medal of Honor Heritage Center. General Bill Raines.
Well, I want to thank all of you for coming today. You had a lot of things you could have done, and I want to welcome you on behalf of our Board of Trustees, our advisory board, our volunteers, and all the other good supporters that we have here in our town. And Josh, we appreciate your being our MC again this year. Our chairman of tonight, or this afternoon's luncheon, Robert Dooley, gave thanks to his committee. But in every good committee, you need a chairman. And let's give Robert Dooley a round of applause. Robert, great job. Well, it's really an honor to stand here today and see so many of you here for our celebration of valor. And it is indeed valor, way above and beyond the call of duty. And we have a speaker today who is in that rare 3,500 plus group that received the Medal of Honor. He certainly gave his best, and he may share part of that story with you. Today's luncheon helps underwrite our Medal of Honor Heritage Center operations, but more importantly, it helps fund our character development program. It's educating our next generation of leaders for our great country, and it emphasizes the 6 character traits that the Medal of Honor recipients share. And those character traits are sacrifice, integrity, patriotism, citizenship, commitment, and courage. And that courage can be on a battlefield, it can be on a playground, as was mentioned, it can be at a boardroom. And sometimes it's not necessarily saying or making a motion, but it's saying the right thing at the right time. It may be the harder right instead of the easier wrong. So those character traits we all can participate in. Admiral Noah Long, who I've entitled our Vice President of Construction, as he likes to say, we're in the process right at the aquarium of building the world's largest character development classroom. And in that, we will teach those 6 character traits. We will be moving down there and cutting the ribbon February 2020. I want to thank CBL and Associates, and particularly Charles Lebovitz, who's here today. They have allowed us to occupy 990 square feet in Northgate Mall. It's allowed us to proceed through the years and to grow. September 30th, we'll be shutting that down and relocating it to the Aquarium Plaza. So I want to say thank you to CBL, because these character traits that we're going to teach, there are 6 character traits. That 7th lesson will be in our Heritage Center. We want and invite all students to be there, because these principles that are espoused in the Medal of Honor are fundamental to humankind. They transcend ethnic, cultural, religious, and political lines, and simply put, they're ideas by which we should all live for, and for which we should all aspire, and which we should also want to pass on to future generations. So if you would, I would like to unveil this year's 2019 Celebration of Valor video. It's going to tell you what we're doing, what we're about, and how you can be a part of our endeavor. Thank you very much.
The Medal of Honor, our nation's highest military honor, given for an act of valor at the risk of life and above and beyond the call of duty. Since its creation, just over 3,500 Medals of Honor have been awarded, starting with the first medals awarded during the Civil War in 1863. Bestowed by the President in the name of Congress on members of the U.S. Armed Forces who distinguished themselves through conspicuous gallantry and bravery at the risk of his or her own life above and beyond the call of duty while engaged in an action against an enemy of the United States. Ordinary men and women who did something extraordinary, and we have the opportunity to get to know them as individuals. What makes a person sacrifice his life for others, and does that power lie within each of us? Our story begins at the birthplace of the Medal of Honor, Chattanooga, a city whose strong heritage includes an undeniable bond with the Medal of Honor. The Great Locomotive Chase of 1862 is a true story that's full of bravery. The now famous general, a Confederate locomotive, was stolen by Captain James Andrews and his 19 men near present-day Kennesaw and driven north towards Chattanooga in an effort to end the war early by crippling the Southern Railroad network. Andrews' plan was thwarted when the general ran out of steam just near Ringgold, Georgia, where a monument now resides marking where the general was abandoned. Eventually, Andrews and his men were captured. 8, including Andrews, were tried and hanged by the Confederate Army in Atlanta and are now buried at the Chattanooga Cemetery. In all, 19 raiders would receive the Medal of Honor, including Private Jacob Parrott, who was the very first person to receive the Medal of Honor on March 25th, 1863.
The Chattanooga campaign, which culminated with the battle at Missionary Ridge, saw many federal troops earn the Medal of Honor for heroism here. And of course, in that context, the only female to ever receive the Medal of Honor, Dr. Mary Walker. So this represents the founding of Chattanooga, the heritage of Chattanooga. It's our history.
To our south, the Battle of Chickamauga was followed by a series of local battles known as the Chattanooga Campaign, the battles of Orchard Knob, Lookout Mountain, Missionary Ridge, and Rossville Gap. On these hallowed grounds, 33 additional Medals of Honor were awarded in 1863, which is why Chattanooga is known as the birthplace of the Medal of Honor. A devoted group of Chattanoogans have worked tirelessly to secure a home for the Medal of Honor right here in the city where it was born. Welcome to the National Medal of Honor Heritage Center. Inside this building will be a treasure trove of historical artifacts and immersive exhibits created by world-renowned designers that will highlight the courageous acts of heroism demonstrated by Medal of Honor recipients. The opening of the National Medal of Honor Heritage Center will complete a vision that has been in the works for decades.
It has really evolved because what we thought of initially, we're all captive of our history, and I thought of it as a static museum with a lot of good-looking artifacts. They were historic, but that vision has matured, and the purpose has evolved to educate and inspire rather than just educate.
The mission of the National Medal of Honor Heritage Center has long been to memorialize the valorous actions of the recipients of our nation's highest military award. Dedicated to connecting people with history, the Heritage Center fulfills its mission and provides a 19,000 square foot living classroom featuring life-size exhibits complete with sights and sounds to create a memorable, meaningful experience for all ages. The desire to preserve and share the stories of recipients has been the cornerstone of the Congressional Medal of Honor Society as well.
We decided that if we didn't do something, all the oral histories of Medal of Honor recipients would be lost, and lost forever. So we started to record them. And then after a short period of time, we realized that these living histories really did have a lot of power. We had an asset that really could be powerful in education.
After recording more than 100 stories of recipients, it was discovered one common thread connected them. They all shared 6 character traits, and those traits have become the foundation of the Medal of Honor Character Development Program. Patriotism, citizenship, courage, integrity, sacrifice, and commitment.
Why I am here is because I wear this medal around my neck. It's not mine, it doesn't belong to me. I hold it for all those men and women that, when asked, stood. They have stood for something more than themselves.
Who will be our future leaders, business owners, teachers, nurses, senators? What can we do as a society to ensure that the future of our country remains free and strong, and our values as a nation defended and preserved?
You know, Benjamin Franklin, at the finale of the Constitutional Convention, said, "We have a republic if we can keep it." The republic is only as strong as we have an active and engaged citizenry. And that's a gift from one generation to the next generation. The Character Development Program helps assure that the young people that we're working with not only understand our government, but they are ready to take an active and engaged role in it. That's the most important thing that we're doing in this program.
Character education is the renewed vision for the National Medal of Honor Heritage Center. It's been woven into the immersive exhibits inside the Heritage Center and the Character Development Program through age-appropriate curriculum that educators will share in classrooms and youth programs. Stories are brought to life and heroes become real people, people that students can relate to. And if students can relate, they have the opportunity to learn.
We're so fortunate as Americans to live in a country where that we were built on certain principles and values that we all share and established that were important to us. Our forefathers did, and I think sometimes that can be forgotten. And I think being able to teach children how to really be a great citizen, how to be a great citizen of these United States of America, and really those traits, and the unique way in which the Medal of Honor, in particular at the high school level, teaches it, and the exposure with the curriculum that's been uniquely developed here through the vignettes, through the stories that have actually taken place.
When the National Medal of Honor Heritage Center began teaching character education in 2017, the response was overwhelming.
I think one of the most profound things that we have been able to do with the Character Development Program is to go out into the community, not in formal classrooms, but to meet the children where they are. James Scott was able to see that need and to be able to put a curriculum together that would work whether we were at Shepherd Center or we were at East Lake or we might be in a center in Nashville at some point in the future. And being able to pair together examples of Medal of Honor recipients with civilians who have also garnered a place in our nation's history.
It was during this time that James Scott, an educator himself, created Character Club. Aimed at a younger audience, children between 7 and 10 years of age, Character Club was introduced in 2018 with an emphasis on reaching at-risk, underserved youth within Chattanooga's youth and family development centers. He was later recognized by the Congressional Medal of Honor Foundation for his contributions.
You start talking to these kids about all of these different traits and all of these amazing examples, and they want to learn this stuff. They think it's cool. And actually working with Shepherd helped us to make sure that we're able to get the character development program to them on their level, which is a lot of fun.
We start with the premise that each and every person possesses the potential to do something extraordinary. We believe that. Why? Look at us. Common people who someone else decided did something extraordinary. If that's the premise, that each person has the potential, what about in a non-military circumstance? Isn't not appropriate for us to recognize those people?
Character. How important is character to the health and well-being of our schools, our communities, and our country? We believe teaching character traits to young people is one of the most important, if not the most important responsibility we have as members of a free society. How else do we repay the debt of gratitude if not through honoring our heroes by inspiring future generations to preserve and protect what others died for?
Education's the single most important thing we can do to affect the future, not just the future of these kids, but the future of the United States of America. And we think through the Character Development Program and Citizen Honors Program that we will be able to reach into the future and change the lives of these kids.
There are more than 3,500 amazing, inspiring, and all too often heartbreaking narratives of Medal of Honor recipients. Together, we are curators of their stories, and we are committed to honoring their sacrifices and contributions to our freedom through character education.
If we could educate young people as they're growing up that each person they meet has the potential to change the world, then we've accomplished something.
I want to welcome back to the stage the 2019 Celebration of Valor Luncheon Chair, Dr. Robert Dooley. Sir.
What an incredible mission and program that is impacting the lives of young people in our community, region, and across the country. And this program exists here in our community because of you, because of your support of this luncheon that raises funds to grow and expand the Medal of Honor Character Development Program. In addition, the funds raised through this luncheon help sustain the day-to-day operations of the new Medal of Honor Heritage Center. And I took a hard hat tour last night, and I'm telling you it's going to be fabulous. That opens early next year. And the Heritage Center will provide ongoing opportunities for everyone of all ages to study the lives, heroic actions, and character traits of Medal of Honor recipients. It will also educate the public about Chattanooga's history as the birthplace of the Medal of Honor. Now, I know you don't wake up every morning thinking, where am I going to donate money today? However, if you do, I would like to talk with you after the luncheon. But I want you to ask yourself that question. And I want you to answer that question by making a commitment, a financial pledge to the Character Development Program in the MOH Heritage Center. I can think of no more worthy cause than investing in our country's future by supporting this program and learning center. A program and a center that inspires and challenges our young people to make a difference in the world by learning, embracing, and living the values of the Medal of Honor. In a few minutes, you're going to hear from Medal of Honor recipient Clint Romachet. After you hear his story of personal sacrifice and the importance of selflessness and commitment to ideals larger than oneself, I know you will not hesitate in supporting the Character Development Program and the Heritage Center with a pledge. So on your table, you will find a large white envelope that has an individual envelope for everyone on your table. Take a few minutes right now and complete a pledge card. And whatever number you're thinking, double it, all right? So whatever number you're thinking, double it. And I'm confident that if we can raise $125,000 today at this luncheon, we will find a match, all right? So there's a challenge. And I've never known this city to say no to investments to make this a stronger and better community. So take out your pledge card. I'm taking out my pledge card. Take out your pledge card and fill it out. And once you're finished, please leave the donation back in the envelope, and we'll collect it at the end of the luncheon. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, Dr. Dooley. Thank you, Dr. Dooley. Now join me in welcoming Linda Moss Mines, Vice President of Education for the Charles H. Coolidge Medal of Honor Heritage Center, for a special presentation. Linda.
First, let me thank you for being here today. If there's one thing that changes the future of this nation, it is education. And it is education that teaches us that each of us has a role of responsibility in the preservation of this republic. It's my honor today to be here to recognize someone who has taken a strong lead in putting that program together. I like to think that he learned those traits of servant leadership from a family that models those traits every day. The reality is that's true, but it may also be that he has a few wee drops of blood from Robert the Bruce. And if you know your Scottish history, we have always been in rebellion, looking for liberty, freedom, and equality. It is our distinct pleasure today as the Board of Trustees for the Charles H. Coolidge Medal of Honor Center to present the first annual Heritage Center Character Development Achievement Award to my friend, my colleague, and an outstanding American, and I might add just a wee bit crazy, he is a veteran who was an EOD guy, and those of you who love the military know they're a little odd, but this is the best kind of odd. And James Scott, I have an award for you, and we have the eternal gratitude of this city this county, this state, and this nation for what you have done for character education and the Community Centers program. James? Please join me in recognizing a change agent in this community. We are changing lives and we are changing communities.
Thank you very much, Linda. What you might not realize as you're all sitting here is how much what you do in this room right now really helps our teachers in the classroom. From the snacks that gets kids excited, to paying the gas, to doing all of those things. This luncheon makes this education possible. So thank you very, very much, all of you, for being here.
Thank you to James. Thank you to Linda for that. I know to this point it's all been pretty awesome, but this is really the good part. It's now my pleasure to introduce General B.B. Bell, Chairman of the Advisory Board of the National Medal of Honor Heritage Center, who will introduce our keynote speaker. General Bell.
Good afternoon. It was morning when we started. The place was hell on earth, and everyone who'd ever been there knew it. Now, the strategic theory was good, as it always is, and the strategic intelligence assessment was mostly correct. The village of Kamdesh, located in Nuristan province, an Afghan border province up there nestled with Pakistan in northeast Afghanistan, Kamdesh was at the intersection of three valley systems, each of which ran back up into Pakistan, where weapons, ammunition, and other supplies were being funneled back down into the Taliban in Afghanistan. So it sounded good on paper to establish a provincial reconstruction team or even a military blocking position at that intersection. Call it what you will, but on paper, Clint, it did kind of make a little sense on paper. We'll interdict the enemy and his supply lines at Kamdesh, was the thinking. But tactically on the ground, it made little sense. It was and always had been a mission to task mismatch. The mountains were too rugged. The movement corridors and reinforcement avenues were too restricted. And the area was dominated by the Taliban. Overall, the population was too unfriendly to the government in Kabul to support the notion of winning hearts and minds or compelling the people there to do much of anything. It was classic. An exposed military position, easily cut off, dominated by high terrain, controlled by the Taliban on all sides, and placed mostly on indefensible ground. Thus, it was almost impossible to defend against a determined enemy attack. That was the reality of Combat Outpost Keating, located just outside Kamdesh in the little hamlet of Ermel. And that's where Staff Sergeant Clint Romachet and his 49 buddies of the American military, all in Bravo Troop, 3rd Squadron, 61st Cavalry Regiment, 4th Brigade Combat Team, 4th Infantry Division, Ivy Division. That's where they found themselves, inside the wire at 5:58 a.m. on the morning of 3 October 2009. Now, it's Clint Romachet's story to tell. I wouldn't dare try. You had to be there. He lived it.
But suffice it to say, what transpired from early that morning until dark that evening was one of the most intense close combat battles of our 18-year war in Afghanistan, and indeed in our military history. The enemy attacked from the high ground on all sides in overwhelming strength. It was mano a mano. Nothing to do with strategy or high-level planning. It was American warriors fighting for each other, fighting for their own lives, and fighting for their unit, mano a mano. The history books now tell us that in that day-long battle, Americans distinguished themselves heroically. 8 U.S. soldiers were killed in battle, 27 were wounded. Remember, there were only 49 of them there, 50 including Clint. All told, American service members serving in and supporting that battle received 37 Army Commendation Medals with V device for valor, 18 Bronze Star medals with V device, 8 Silver Stars, America's third highest award for gallantry in combat, 1 Distinguished Service Cross, America's second highest award for valor in combat, and 2 Americans were awarded the Medal of Honor. One of those Americans is with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to introduce to you that American warrior, an American soldier, and an American hero, Clinton L. Romesha. Clint, would you please come up?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Please have a seat. You know, I got to talk to Jack Jacobs for a little bit because he was here last year, and he said, you know, Chattanooga does it right. They make sure when you got these 5'5" guys coming up here speaking, they have this clear podium so they can actually see you the entire time. And then he reminded me I had to wear pants. It's truly an honor and a privilege to be here today. I know we sat here a little bit ago and reflected and acknowledged our veterans in the crowd. The one thing I would like to sit here and do right now, my father was a Vietnam veteran, did 2 tours. If you served in Vietnam, will you please stand? I want to tell you, gentlemen, from the bottom of my heart, you guys served in a time when you came home and it wasn't to welcoming crowds. It wasn't to parades. It was very often to negative comments, even at point of getting things thrown at you, being called some of the nastiest things. It was a pretty dark time for this country, not respecting those great men. And I'm telling you, like I said, from the bottom of my heart, welcome home. Because you men were the same ones that were there every time I came home to make sure I got that warm welcome. I apologize, I'm kind of fighting a cold, so if my voice cracks or something, or if I leave you with a head cold more than inspiration leaving Chattanooga, I apologize. It was great to see that video from earlier, and we have Travis and Molly Hudgens in the crowd tonight, and that is something that is very amazing for me to be a part of, is to watch what the Medal of Honor Society has done with our Citizens Honors program, and recognizing everyday Americans doing heroic and amazing things. And as that picture flipped up on the screen, the great thing I love about this whole thing is I got to present Travis with his award. And I seen that was a very quick picture. I don't know if you guys were paying attention to it, but we were wearing kind of the same outfit that day. And of course, my buddy's got a hold of that picture, and I don't know if you can zoom in there, but they made this awesome meme. Can you guys zoom in with the camera? No, it's not that clear. But essentially what they took is a picture of me and Travis and then put it on right next to a poster of twins with Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I'm glad, Travis, again, I'm not wearing the same suit as you today, so I can't get made fun of anymore. Like I said, it's an honor and a privilege to be here. I think we live in a time right now where we think this country is kind of going down the toilet. We think that the youth is disrespectful. They don't understand. They don't appreciate. And I can tell you, coming to events like this, seeing a community like Chattanooga, you guys are breaking down all that negativity and all that stuff you hear on the media about the division in this country. You guys are setting the example, leading the way, showing what right looks like. I get called a hero quite often. I don't believe that at all. I don't think anything I did that day was overly heroic. I thought it was doing a job. And I was getting to serve next to some of the greatest men I've ever gotten to know. What I think is heroic is when a community comes together. Everybody puts their differences aside to accomplish something greater than themselves. And that comes from service. And everyone thinks, well, to serve this country, you've got to throw that uniform on. Not the case at all. Like I said, I grew up in a family of military tradition and history. Grandfather, World War II. My dad, Vietnam. It was always there, but my father, my grandfather, just let us know that we didn't have to serve in the military to serve. We can do something in service to country outside of that spectrum. And I see so many people here today that are doing that right now. Being able to be here today also gives me an opportunity to share a story, talk a little bit about what happened on October 3rd of 2009. It was one of those days, one of those moments that never in a million years that I think I'd ever be part of. That always happens to someone else. I'd been in the military almost 10 years at that point. That was my third combat deployment. I'd done 2 tours to Iraq before then. We got orders that we're going to Afghanistan. I'd made the decision to get out of the Army at that point, figured I'd grow up. I've grown up enough, it's time to shut that chapter in my life and go on. And so before even going over there, I realized that was going to be it, my last tour. But at least I got Afghanistan knocked out of the way. And I was very blessed to be in the unit I was in. Red Platoon, our platoon, 1st Platoon, Black Knight Troop. We had just an assortment of personalities in that platoon. And that's the other thing I loved about the military is you got to meet everybody from all over this country, different backgrounds, different religion, different creeds, different, just big cities, small towns. You just never knew who your next buddy in your foxhole was going to be. But it didn't matter where they came from, what their background was, you always had that brotherhood. You made that team, you built that camaraderie, that esprit de corps. And you capitalized on that before you went overseas to go fight an enemy. And we were fortunate enough in our platoon that Sergeant Joshua Kirk, he was a 173rd Airborne guy. He had just got done with his previous tour in Afghanistan in the exact area we were going to deploy to. And he came to us about 6 months before we were going back to that area. And he was able to give us that firsthand account. Hey, this place sucks. These mountains are straight up and down. Hey, you guys, we've got a PT, we've got to get our lung capacities up. And we kind of were fortunate to be from Colorado Springs where the elevation was pretty high, and we're going to a spot where the elevation was going to be pretty high. But he told us, we got to learn how to angle fire. We got to learn we got to mount our weapons, modify our weapons mounts, because we've got to be able to fire machine guns on a straight 90 vertical going up a mountain. That was just so important to have that firsthand account, because you can sit there and you can see on paper, like the general was talking about, on paper things make a whole lot of sense until you stand on the ground and you're like, oh, no, this doesn't at all. So it was very important for us to have Sergeant Kirk as part of that, and he really led the way of building this team and this platoon. And so we fast forward and we deploy. And like I said, we'd gotten the briefs, we'd gotten told, hey, look, Combat Outpost Keating is going to be kind of isolated. We can't really resupply you with vehicles because the road that used to go up there is now blown up and taken over, and about the widest thing you can put down it is 2 goats side by side. And a helicopter's the only way we're going to get in and out to you guys. And well, they only fly at night and only when there's zero illumination. Oh, by the way, you guys are kind of just outside of 155 artillery support, so we can kind of reach you guys with the big guns, but just only to the kind of south of you, so hopefully you don't get attacked from the north. I said, well, we'll have OP Fritchie there that'll help overwatch you, but in the grand scheme of things, it couldn't directly see us. And it was, I remember that first night getting there as we flew in, and it was just kind of the key leaders of the platoon going into left and right seat ride. And coming off the helicopter, we landed, dropped the ramp, and we walk off. I've got my night vision goggles down, and I just remember stepping off, kind of getting my orientation, looking across the way, and it's like, if you've ever worn, well, if you've never worn a set of night vision goggles, it doesn't matter how much cloud coverage really is going on or how dim the moon or the stars are, you can always still pick up on the horizon where the sun is on the opposite side of the world. That's what these things do. They amplify the most minute amount of light, but you can always see where the horizon is. And I just remember kind of looking out and scanning real quick, and it's like, oh, okay, it's all black. That's weird. All right, let me look up a little more. Well, that's still kind of dark and black. And look up a little more, and it's like, well, these things are broke. I'll take them to the arms room guy in the morning and have him look at them. And waking up the next morning, I realized when I stepped out in the daylight, those things were not broke at all. I just did not look up high enough. And standing out in the middle at that outpost, no matter which direction you looked, straight up was mountains, and we sat at the very bottom, like sitting in the bottom of a teacup. And of course, you pull out the manual for defensive doctrine in the military, and we were the absolute opposite description of that. And I'm kind of old school, so I like to write letters when I was deployed. There's just something about putting pen to paper and putting your thoughts down, and I remember very quickly, after getting there and getting settled, I wrote a letter to my grandmother. And it just very simply said, you know, it's a letter to Grandma, so let's not tell her too many things, but just let her know we're here, we're safe. You know, the guys' morale's high. Hey, it's really beautiful over here. Wake up every morning, get to look up at these mountains. There's a gorgeous river, just kind of describing the terrain. And a couple of weeks later, she sends me one back, and it just simply starts with, what the hell are you doing looking up? Everybody knows you take the high ground. You know, that was my grandmother who, in just a few lines, kind of pinpointed some of the flaws of Combat Outpost Keating. But that leads me into, you know, that was my third combat deployment. I'd been around the block a while. I'd seen some things, and, you know, being in a leadership position, you know, and that's what's really impressive, though, is those young men that came there, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, Copus and Jonesy and Mace and Knight. You know, that was their first time ever in combat, and to be put into that situation where literally we're at the bottom of a valley, we're surrounded by mountains on all 4 sides, we have no artillery support other than our 120 mortars and mortars from Fritchie. It could take anywhere from an hour for close air support to get up our way. We knew if we needed ground forces reinforcement, it was going to take quite a while. We knew that we were only going to get a hot meal maybe once every 3 days. We were going to get a shower once a week. Priority of resupply went to bullets and water and fuel and stuff like that, not really the creature comforts of life. And at not one point did I ever see one of those young men bitch, gripe, or complain that this sucks and this is too hard. When we first got to that outpost in our barracks, there was this little saying that was written by a previous unit up on one of the beams that just simply said, "It never gets better." And we looked at that, you know, as a platoon, we sat there and we're like, you know what, it doesn't get better. Because we're going to make every day here the best frickin' day possible. And it's that attitude, that mentality, that drive, that no matter what life offers you, you can make it better off sheer will alone. And that was so inspiring to see those young men. Like I said, yeah, there's always the mumble and gripe of, oh man, the Taliban shot an RPG in and took out the water trailer again, and well, we were supposed to have a shower this morning, now we gotta wait another week. You know, there's always those little gripes like that, but then you get to play the game of who's got the worst smell, and it was just really inspiring to watch these young men, like I said, as we call it, embrace the suck. They made the most of a bad situation. And as things went on, the lead up to October 3rd, we were there for about 3 months. And pretty much every morning, every evening, at least once a day, we got attacked. And sometimes it was just a couple of rounds of AK fire. Sometimes it was coordinated with a recoilless rifle and RPG and machine guns. And they'd hit us in one area and then open up in another. And we ended up, calling it our Taliban alarm clock because it normally kicked off around 6 in the morning every morning. And it was kind of the routine almost. But we'd get the intel briefs that, hey, you guys, intel's reporting sizable force is going to mass on you guys. You're going to get attacked by 100 to 300 fighters. And that report came in every day for 3 months. And it's one of those things, you know it's possible, but you hear it for so long, and it's what can we do different? And we were trying. And at that point, we knew our command didn't want us there. I watched Colonel George, Colonel Brown, my squadron brigade commander, do everything in their power to try and shift this thing, to close us down, pull us out. But we had the elections going on that year. That kept us open. We were the only U.S. presence in Nuristan, and they wanted free elections. So we'll shut you down after that. Well, elections came and went. Well, sorry, we've got this other mission, Bari-Alai to the north, has been overran, and we're trying to recapture that. That's taken all your air assets. So you guys got to stay open for a little bit longer. And it just kind of dragged on and dragged on. Well, finally, we were about 2 weeks from closing. Finally got the official word. We are done. We are out of there. And it was like, okay, cool. Let's go on and make a difference somewhere else. But I said October 3rd, 2009, 6 o'clock in the morning, because I like to round up, sir. The Taliban had a different story for us. I was in bed still at the time. I was the acting platoon sergeant for Red Platoon, and I'd just gotten off Sergeant of the Guard around midnight before that. Stayed up for a little bit doing some things, then went to bed. And there was nothing the night before that really indicated that that next morning was going to be what it was. It just seemed pretty normal. Well, at 6 o'clock, first rounds come in. And I tell you what, like I said, it was normal to get woken by the Taliban alarm clock. Well, waking up that morning, I remember throwing my kit on, turning my radio on, and you could just hear it in the air. This was different. And as soon as my radio powered up, every defensive position was calling in overwhelming enemy fire. They tried to go to cyclic rate of fire to fire back, gain fire superiority. Just wasn't happening. Very quickly, things went from bad to worse. We knew immediately that we were overwhelmed by an enemy that was hitting us with sniper fire, machine gun fire, small arms fire, RPG fire, recoilless rifle fire, indirect fire. And each position continued to try and fight back and just could not shoot fast enough. Immediately, right away, we get the first call that Kevin Thompson was hit at the mortar position. Shortly thereafter, Sergeant Kirk had tried to go through the front gate area to reinforce the west and was hit. Our blue platoon was attempting to run ammunition out to these vehicles and resupply them, and they had snipers trained on the building. Very quickly after that, we heard SCUSA had been hit. Within the first hour, our casualties were piling up. That first hour, the enemy had breached our wire. We were waiting for close air support, and unfortunately, when things seem to go wrong, it's not because of one or two things. About a week prior to that, where we'd normally have helicopter support coming out of Fob Bostic that was only about 20 minutes away, unfortunately, a lovely little soldier called Bo Birdahl decided to go take a stroll, which then pulled our air coverage to go look for him. Because right, wrong, or indifferent, we're not going to leave anybody behind. We're going to do everything in our power to bring them home. But that pulled our air coverage. And what was supposed to be about a 20-minute wait turned into almost an hour. And within that hour, like I said, our casualties started piling up. The eastern side of the camp, where we had a contingent of Afghan National Army guys, upon first contact had pretty much abandoned positions. The whole eastern side of the camp was open. Zachary Kopis, one of my young machine gunners, was on a Mark 19 fully automatic grenade launcher, looking out to the east. He was the only truck covering the entire eastern flank. And because of the chaos and everything going on, and no matter where you were standing outside, unless you were in a fortified position, you were exposed to enemy fire. Normally we'd have a machine gun team there to help kind of protect his backside, but we had to pull those guys because there was just no cover for them. And Kopis sat in that Humvee for almost 12 hours by himself that day, holding the only position left in the battle, down on lock, defending it by himself. At one point, as like I said, I'd gotten word that Kirk had been hit and brought him back. I'd heard that Gallegos and Larson and Carter and Mace and Sergeant Miller were isolated out in a Humvee off to the western side and was totally overwhelmed. And I went into the barracks after checking on Kirk's status, ran in there, and I found Specialist Gregory, who at the time had a machine gun with him, but we were isolated from our ammo supply point, so we were running low on ammo. But he had 200 round belts left. And of course, I'm kind of a greedy old NCO. I like shooting machine guns, so if I can switch off an M4 for a machine gun, I'll do that any day. And so I went, seen Gregory, who was basically posted up at the door waiting for guys to come in, and said, hey, follow me. We grabbed the machine gun, we snuck around, we went to a generator that looked out to the west, and we set it up, got on the gun, called up Gallegos and said, hey, I'm going to provide covering fire. As soon as I start, you guys need to move. Get out of there. And I just remember as we looked out to the west, I mean, it was like ants coming down the hillside. There were guys everywhere. We opened up with the first 100 round and just tried to go from position to position to put their heads down and kind of squall them a little bit and silence them, and just kept calling Gallegos. And it's like, hey man, you gotta move, you gotta move. And he kept calling back, and he's like, brother, you ain't bringing enough firepower. We went through that first belt, loaded that second belt, called him back, hey, you gotta get moving. He just kept calling back, you're not bringing enough firepower. At that point, the enemy had, like I said, breached our front gate. Unbeknownst to us at the time, they came around, they outflanked us on the right. Fired an RPG, and luckily the generator took most of the blast. Blew me onto Gregory. I remember picking him up, dusting him off, and I sent him on his way. Just make it back to the barracks, buddy. I'll cover you. Continued to fire, eliminated those guys, and at that point I had to call up Gallegos and tell him, hey, I can't hold this position, I'm out of ammo. And he just simply called back and said, hey brother, we'll be here when you get here. You know, that was kind of soul crushing, because I knew if the roles were reversed, that big guy that we used to call Taco Truck would bulldoze this whole side of this frickin' mountain to come get me. We gotta come get those guys. Displaced back, trying to figure out what was next. I said we had chaos going on. That's when Sergeant Hart came up to me, young kid from Northern California too. Hart was one of these kids that I think the only no in his vocabulary wasn't N-O, it was K-N-O-W. Yeah, I know, I can do that. And he came up and he's like, hey, Sergeant Romeshay, we found some more 50 cal ammo. I think we can sneak up to this Humvee, load that 50 cal, push it out to Gallegos. We can use that 50 cal in that armored Humvee to try and bring those guys back. And I told Hart, no. The front gate's wide open, can't secure your northern flank, can't secure your eastern flank. You're going to be out there by yourself. But like I said, no wasn't in his vocabulary. And after some discussion back and forth, and I don't know if we argued for 20 seconds or 2 hours, I just knew I wasn't going to turn him off that idea. So I told him, okay, go ahead. And he grabbed Faulkner and he grabbed Griffin. And they somehow made it out to that Humvee. But as soon as they left that back door, I knew that was the last I'd see of them. I said they made it to the Humvee. They got that 50 cal up, running, and started pushing. They were gaining some ground. At the same moment, I get a call from Copus, who, like I said, at this point had been sitting there most of the day by himself in that Mark 19 truck. At this point, he had a sniper that moved in behind him and kept pinning him down, so every time he tried to get up and shoot, he couldn't. And as I made my way back through there, back to his position, I came along, dragging off a Russian sniper rifle, picked that up, went over to his Humvee, asked him kind of what the situation was, and I played this little game of peekaboo back and forth, and we quieted that sniper. Gave Copus the opportunity to get back on that Mark 19 and start holding things down on lock. As that was going on, I could hear Gallegos and Hart on the radio. Just kept telling, Gallegos kept calling and telling Hart, brother, don't come here. Go away, you're drawing too much fire. We'll just hang on, back off. And Hart just kept calling back, no, brother, we're coming to get you. Then the call came across the radio. Hart keys it up and you hear, they've got an RPG pointed right at me. And then boom, never heard his voice again. Like I said, at this point, we have almost no air coverage. We're piling up casualties. So things are just kind of continuing to go from bad to worse. I'm hoping that doesn't fall, but I'm going to leave it on the ground then. And it was kind of at this point where the call had been, we're going to Alamo, essentially meaning the outposts that we controlled, we would shrink down the perimeter and basically hold 3 buildings, our barracks, the Tactical Operations Center, and the aid station, and just wait. QRF was trying to be on its way, but weather and other conditions was holding that process. The enemy had put anti-aircraft gun, multi-anti-aircraft guns up at about 8,000 feet, so when the helicopters were trying to come over, they were flying right into the gun lines. And the enemy we faced that day was very well prepared, very well thought out. So it came to the point where we hear this, hey, we need Alamo, enemy in the wire. And I remember going into the talk, and it was like my lieutenant was in control of this entire thing. First time ever being deployed, brand new lieutenant, Andrew Bunderman, has been handed what essentially is one of the most deadliest battles in Afghanistan. Just a young ROTC graduate from the University of Minnesota. And I remember walking in there, asking him, sir, what do we got going on? And he's like, I don't know. What do you think? He asked me. And I said, well, we're going to take this bitch back. Because I knew if we still had air in our lungs, one more breath to breathe, one more step to take, we could do something and not just sit here and wait. And he said, okay, what are you thinking? I said, well, it's 3 simple things. We got to get to that ammo supply point because we're almost out of ammo, and if we can't start feeding ourselves ammo, we're going to be out of the fight anyway. We got to get to that front gate. We got to shut that thing down, push the enemy off, and most importantly, we got to go find our guys. Like I said, I got to work with Lieutenant Bunderman for quite a while before that point. We were together for almost 8 months, and we synchronized very well. He was one of the first lieutenants that, when he first came to our platoon, he was straight up, hey, look, I don't like to work very hard. I like to chew tobacco and drink. So as long as you don't make me look like an asshole, I'll make sure the paperwork's straight. All right, we can get along, sir. Like your style. And so I told him the plan, and he's like, all right, let's do this. And he trusted enough in me at that point to let me essentially pitch him a plan of counterattacking an enemy, a superior enemy force from an elevated position. They ain't gonna teach you that technique in any military doctrine. It's so obscure. And I remember going into the barracks, and literally at this point, we had guys just pointing weapons at the doors, and if you weren't speaking English and wearing an American uniform, you were getting shot as soon as you came through a door. And that's what they were doing, just holding position there. And I came in, and it's probably one of the proudest moments of my military life, where I walked in and I said, I just need a group of volunteers. And I had 5 men. Raz, Delaney, Danley, Jones, and Miller. And stood up, said, we'll do it. Didn't tell them what we were about to do at that point. They said, hey, we'll do it, we're here. And so I told them a plan. Hey, we're gonna go take the ammo supply point, we're gonna shut that front gate, and we're gonna go find our guys. A total of 6 of us. And I said, you guys ain't gotta do this. This is a volunteer effort right here. Those 5 guys said, I'll follow you anywhere. And we did, we pushed out. We somehow made it to that ammo supply point. We started feeding the ammo back. We started getting some great air support coming in. At one point, as we were kind of mired there at the ammo supply point, I had to run back and go link up with Lieutenant Bunnerman again. And I just remember going into that tactical operations center, and just like a typical lieutenant, he's sitting there with one hand on the radio and a book in front of his face, and he's reading. And of course, I got to point out that, hey, sir, you know we are in a firefight. What are you doing reading a book? Typical LT. And as he looks up and we make eye contact, I realize he's reading the Army's call for fire manual. And he goes, hey, I'm about to start bringing 500-pounders less than 100 meters away from our position. There's about a 90% chance we could probably hit ourselves. What do you think? And I said, sir, I'd rather it be our bombs than theirs. And that man had the guts to make that decision to say, you know what? We've got to do this. The risk was going to be worth the reward. So we started bringing those bomb strikes, I mean, just ever so close. We pushed out, got reestablished, coordinated that air support. We were able to push around, and we were able to get to the front gate, and we were able to close that. We got held up there for a bit, though. Then I get a call across the radio. Probably one of the best calls I ever got in my life. Munderman calls me up and says, hey, brother, you won't believe this. Because at this point, we had lost communication with Gallegos and that Humvee, with Hart and the rest of them, for about 6 hours. He's like, you won't believe this, but Larson and Carter are still alive. Mace is badly wounded. And if you guys can push out, provide covering fire, Larson and Carter will grab Mace and bring him back to the aid station. So, yep, we got this. We pushed out, we provided that covering fire, watched Larson and Carter bring Mace right back through our lines, got him to the aid station. And then I got my next most favorite call on the radio from Larson. Called me up and he's like, hey, Sergeant Rowe, where you at? What do you need? I said, hey, we're at the front gate. We need to push to go find some other guys, but really what I need is a smoke and a drink. And about 2 minutes later, here comes Larson with a carton of Camel Light cigarettes and a 12-pack of Dr. Peppers. And in the midst of all this battle, we stopped there in what we called the Shura building, kind of a little hard site that we had by the front gate. And we stopped for a moment once Larson got there, lit up a cigarette, cracked open a Dr. Pepper, and took just a quick minute to pause and think, you know what? We've got this. We can keep pushing. Larson told me that they were on their way back, they had discovered Griffin was just outside the door around the corner. He said that Gallegos, last he had seen him, kind of moved down by the Porta-John trailer. He didn't quite know where Martin was, but he seen him kind of coming back toward the front gate. Last he had eyes on him, but he had no idea where Hart was. So we pushed out, and we were able to grab Griffin. Pushed up a little farther, we were able to find Martin by the laundry trailer. Pushed up, and we found Gallegos. But at this point, with only 7 guys now, we couldn't continue to push like we wanted to get up to the mortar pit and continue the sweep. We were just strung out too far. We got told that QRF had already landed, they were making their way down the mountain, and the order came to pull back, hold the fence, and wait. And that's what we did. Just as dark was starting to set upon us, KRF from a chosen company started entering our backwire area. You know, and that entire time waiting for those guys, just the sinking in your soul was, where is Hart? The enemy's tactic was very clear. The Taliban loved, if they could ever get their hands on an American body, they were taking it. And that was the fear. Out of everything that day, the only thing I was scared of wasn't getting shot, wasn't dying. It was what was happening to everybody else. And please God, we got to bring everybody home. As the QRF pushed through, they found him. That night at just about dusk, after almost 12 hours, we finally had 100% accountability of all personnel from Cop Keating. You know, I look back on that day and you can sit there and you can see there's a lot of tragic things that happened. But I got to see so many heroic and just inspiring things with the men I served with. I got to see a kid, Zachary Kopis. He was 21 years old at the time, sat in that Humvee by himself, holding the entire eastern side of the camp on lock. The same kid who grew up in Mennonite left that to go pursue more worldly things in life, was sleeping in his cousin's closet in Colorado, that smoked too much weed one day, thinking he was on his way to PetSmart for a job interview, that ended up walking into a recruiting station. That same kid sat in that Humvee all day. You can't tell me we don't have, in the grand scheme of this great country, we don't all have it in us. We just don't know it at times. And I can tell you this right now, I got to witness it firsthand. I get to witness it still today. I got to witness a day that some might look at as one of the worst days of someone's life. But I tell you what, I got to watch so much love that day, I can't even describe it. Because that enemy that was barreling down on us hated us so much. 300 against 50. It's almost like 8-to-1 odds. I'm not good at math, but it's something like that. That later, as the investigation went through, Cop Keating was deemed indefensible. An indefensible position that should have never been there. And I'll stand here today and tell you, guess what? I watched 50 Americans defend the indefensible. And they did it not because of whoever the commander-in-chief was. They didn't do it because some 4-star general ordered us over there. They did it out of love for each other, plain and simple. The enemy hated us and wanted to kill us. We loved each other and wanted to protect each one of us. And that's what made us successful that day. That's why I'm here today. If it wasn't for those 8 men and those 49 others, I wouldn't be standing here. This isn't my medal. I got selected to wear it. That was all. This thing represents so much more than me. It represents every soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Coast Guard that has ever put on that uniform. Past conflicts to current ones going on, to unfortunately the future ones of tomorrow. Those values I learned growing up and in the military are the same values we got to pass on to our youth. Like I said, people kind of think that this next generation is lost. The millennials, they're no good, they're worthless, they're lazy. Like I said, they're kids. They've never learned anything else. They're still growing up and learning in life. We as adults need to teach them that, pass that on to them, make sure it's never forgotten. Our freedom isn't transferred by our bloodlines. It's transferred through our experience, our history, by ensuring the next generation never forgets what was laid down and given to them prior to them coming to this world. I'll leave you with just this last one thing, and I really mean this truly from the bottom of my heart. Wearing the medal comes with a burden. It's not given out when things went really awesome on a battlefield. It happens when things went horribly, horribly wrong. A lot of weight behind it. But I got to sit up here today and tell each one of you that story. Talk about Kirk, Gallegos, Mace, Scusa, Griffin, Hart, Thompson, Martin. Those 8 great men that are no longer here to tell it themselves. And I hope I got to put a little bit of weight on each and every one of you to help me carry this forward. Thank you very much.
Clint, on behalf of all of us, and particularly for we Vietnam veterans, welcome home. We hope you'll take this plaque home and remember us. And may all of us here today remember Clint Romachet and those quality traits that he's spoken about. And may we live our lives to honor those 8 soldiers of yours. Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for being here. That was outstanding. Thank you to Clint. That was outstanding. I think you would agree with that. I know we're a little, yeah. Thank you. I know we're a little bit over, and I know everyone's got places to go, but once again, on behalf of everyone here who put this together, thank you for being here. You guys are proof that we live in an awesome place, and great things are happening in our city at the Heritage Center, and we're just so proud. Remember, deposit your gift or pledge information in the envelope at your table. All this goes to help sustain the character development program, which is just a huge part of the mission. Thank you for being here. Have a great day. God bless. I want to bring up Dr. Bernie Miller one more time for our benediction.
Thank you for this wonderful experience and recollection of a man who put his life on the line and came back to tell us about it. We thank you for all of those who are here who support our military and servicemen and women across the country, and in particular here in Chattanooga. We thank you for all those who support this wonderful Heritage Center. And we thank you for all of those who are elected officials who serve us tirelessly, who also have their own stories to tell. We thank you for each person that's here today, and I pray God's blessings on each life that's here. And I pray that as we leave, we will make a commitment to make a difference in someone else's life. I pray in the name of my Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Have a great day. We'll see you next year.